cover-up at high society.
The woman was named Mary Ann or Polly Nicol. Her throat had been cut twice, from left to right. There were signs on the spine that the murderer had been hacking away at it, trying to cut her head off.
I need more of that. Bring it up. Good. There you go. Stand by and try it again.
There have been 20 fires there since last May, and people in the town have started sleeping in shifts because they don't know who's doing it. They don't know when the next fire is going to come. They don't know who the next victim is going to be.
I'm waking up for reasons that this guy put there. My dog scratches his ear, and I wake up. 2 cars go by at 2 o'clock in the morning, and it wakes me up.
My worst fear is that it will happen again. I'm scared to death.
Whack. Come on. It's all about Mike. Show him.
The great thing about Billy Crystal is that he can tell you what's going on inside the head of a stand-up comic.
Take me home. I went the distance with a pit bull.
As long as I can remember, I've been wanting to be funny. I was always doing characters even when I was little. I was accepting awards in my bathroom. Welcome to West 57. They dropped the street deep, 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 deep.
Give me a reset on your audio.
Resetting audio.
Audio is good, and take it.
Welcome to West 57. I'm Steve Croft. Fire can be one of the most frightening words in the English language. Arson, one of the most baffling crimes. Not only is it rarely solved, the motivation, the reason the arsonist actually strikes the match often goes unanswered. Nowhere in America is this better understood right now than in Jefferson, New Hampshire, a small town of 800, nestled in the shadows of the White Mountains.
Jefferson's a very small town. It's a very close-knit town. It always has been.
I would estimate that at least half the people in town are related to one another, not too distantly.
They live like the motto of New Hampshire, live free or die.
A town where people help each other out, know everybody's business. It's a good little town with a lot of spirit.
But in May of this year, something happened that would severely test that spirit. It began innocently, so innocently that no one realized at first exactly what was going on.
It looked like another rite of spring. A bunch of kids out, maybe lighting brush and grass fires and torching a barn. There goes another barn, and it was sort of a joke.
John Harrigan is publisher of the Coas County Democrat, the weekly newspaper that's given Jefferson its news since 1838.
When was the first time you realized that this was more than just a springtime rite?
I think maybe the second barn fire, and then we get into dwellings. And about the time a dwelling went up and it became obvious that it was set, then we said, well, we got a whole different ball game here.
We were the first house that was hit by the arsonist. And I had 3 children in the house.
Paige Matson was across the street playing bingo when her rooming house caught on fire. Her children called the volunteer fire department. The damage was minor. But 3 days later, the Perkins down the road weren't so lucky. It was fire number 10 in all and left 7 people homeless.
I lost all my teddy bears. My dad lost his guns. My brother, he lost all his baseball trophies and stuff.
This was my son's bedroom. His bed was over there.
They seemed to come in clusters, 1 more in May, 3 in June, each one a bit more reckless than the last. The Hartfords were number 14.
We were in bed,
smoke alarm went off at 1:15 in the morning.
You know, I screamed fire, and we all got out onto the back roof.
And there were flames coming out of every single window in that short period of time.
I think probably the scariest thing is knowing that 5 minutes after we got out of our house, our roof collapsed.
You think you were meant to be in there?
Yeah.
Basically, every little thread of information that comes in is explored to the very end.
Jefferson is too small to have a police force of its own, so the state police barracks in nearby Twin Mountain was reinforced with a special 30-man task force. Lieutenant Gary Sloper is in charge.
Do you think this person is from Jefferson?
It's obviously someone that has lived in Jefferson for a period of time or is very familiar with Jefferson, an individual that knows the community like the back of his hand.
And someone who knows the woods. Whoever was setting the fires was probably traveling on foot, using a network of snowmobile trails, railroad tracks, and the right-of-way for the Portland pipeline. Perhaps it was two people, one setting the fires, another driving.
You're in a town where people notice things. Very hard to do anything in Jefferson without being noticed. I think, for one thing, there's always the fear that you're overlooking something very obvious. It's just maybe somebody we're seeing every day. Somebody that's Mr. Nice Guy on the outside and is overlooked by most of the town. He's invisible because he's so familiar.
Perhaps John Harrigan wrote something the arsonist didn't like. Perhaps it was random selection. In any event, a passing motorist phoned in the alarm that saved Harrigan's house. It was fire number 16.
My dog scratches his ear, and I wake up. I never would have before. A skunk digs a grub up. I wake up. 2 cars go by at 2 o'clock in the morning, and it wakes me up. But I really resent the fact that this person has crept into my psyche and sort of won a victory over me.
You think he's winning?
Well, he's winning because he's preoccupying my mind and my time. And I think that's what my friends and neighbors feel, is that this guy is doing a number on them and they can't get at him.
This is the Merrill place, huh?
Yes, yeah.
5 people were asleep in this house and 2 camping on the lawn when the arsonist set number 17 shortly after midnight on August 8th.
Where did it start?
We believe this area that we're in here right now is our area of origin.
John Southwell is the arson investigator assigned to the task force since June. He quickly ruled out insurance fraud or the profit motive, and to him, it did not seem the work of a pyromaniac.
To me, it's more of a terror tactic.
What do you mean a terror tactic?
The fact that the town's afraid to sleep. Everybody's watching everybody else. They're watching their own properties. They're scared to death.
How's it changed your life?
A lot of changes. You want to go grocery shopping, somebody stays home. You want to go to movies, you want to go out for pizza, somebody stays home. You got to watch your property.
You say a subject's white male, Glenn?
The Hartfords are not the only ones in Jefferson standing guard. At night, the town that never bothered to lock its doors is lit up like a Christmas tree. Some families have set up tripwires. The Hartfords sleep in shifts, listening to police scanners.
Donna stays up at night till 2 in the morning. It gets me up at 2, and that's when my day begins.
Has it affected the way you look at strangers?
Well, it isn't necessarily strangers. It's your own townspeople. I mean, you look at everybody differently. It's made us crazy.
Tired and crazy?
Tired and just stressed out.
What's your worst fear?
My worst fear is that it will happen again.
There's no such thing as a secret in a small town. A secret is sort of a short-lived phenomenon, and it's a matter of time before it comes out.
The first break in the investigation would come with fire number 19, the log cabin home of Michael LaLumiere. The fire was reported by his younger brother, Lance, seen here in the red shirt. He was fighting the blaze when the fire department arrived. At first, Lance was treated as a hero, but the state police questioned him for 8 hours that day, and he would become the first suspect. Shy, friendly, and a bit slow, the 24-year-old dishwasher had once been a volunteer fireman in Jefferson. He was placed under 24-hour surveillance until last week.
Members of the New Hampshire State Police Arson Task Force have arrested and formally charged Lance LaLumiere, Turnpike Road, Jefferson, New Hampshire, with arson a Class A felony.
He was charged only with setting his brother's fire, although the state police said it expected to charge him in 15 others. In the newspaper, there were reports of a confession, but that still left 5 fires unexplained, and Lance had ironclad alibis for the last 2, numbers 20 and 21. Few people in town seemed to think he was capable of this alone.
It's all a lie. I know Lance didn't do it. He's not that kind of person.
This kid couldn't even go to the bathroom without somebody watching him, and, you know, all the pressure's just built up in the last 2 weeks. You could just see him getting tense up, and I think he just finally broke down and says, no, get him off my back, I'll admit to him. I think that's what happened.
Last week, the task force made a second arrest, another volunteer fireman. 19-year-old Larry Coulter, who works at the corner store, was charged only with setting a single fire in the nearby town of Dalton, but he's clearly a suspect in the Jefferson arsons. His mother had helped raise emergency funds for the fire department. His father is a former fire captain.
The people that have been caught are close to home. We know them all. It's very sad.
Larry Coulter has confessed to nothing. He's out on bail now, back at the corner store. It's been a month now since the last fire, but the task force is still here. The case is still open. Less than 20% of all arson cases end with convictions. The evidence almost always is destroyed by the crime. It's possible, perhaps even likely, that Jefferson will never know anything more about the who and the why than it does right now.
My fear is that this will just fade away without an answer, and that's the worst. Everybody hates to think about that. They want an answer.
It's not going to change our lifestyle. It's not going to change the way we've been living for the last 5 months.
We're not going to shut our lights off out back of our house.
I think when the dog barks, I'm still going out there with the shotgun. That's the way everybody else in town feels, too, I'm sure.
Coming up next, Billy Crystal.
Day after day, more people depend on Subaru wagons than any imported wagon in America. And with good reason. They're reliable and durable. In fact, if Subaru didn't make your life easier...
Honey, is dinner ready?
Who would?
Up to $1,000 cash back from Subaru means a great deal on a great car.
31, 32. Gray hair creeps up on you until suddenly all the mirrors are asking the same question. Should you cover your gray? 36. As nature forces you to answer, know this. There is a hair coloring as gentle to the hair as a shampoo. Loving Care. No peroxide, no roots. Loving Care covers your gray with a beautiful match to your natural color. 40. Gray hair or Loving Care. Let us know when you reach your decision.
You are alone. Darkness blankets the city. Footsteps approach. The danger is real. In your mind, you remember someone who can help, who cares, who understands justice. Your protection is back Wednesday night. Are you ready for The Equalizer?
Few baby boom comedians can claim a career as long as Billy Crystal's. He began performing professionally in his parents' Long Island living room at the age of 3. Back then, his audience consisted of family, friends, and relatives. Today, 37 years later, as my colleague Stephen Schiff found out, he can still turn any audience into family for an evening.
Hey, kid, have you seen Aggie? No. Do you know the show? I'm just the janitor. You're on in 20 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen.
As long as I can remember, I've been wanting to be funny. I was always doing characters even when I was little. I was accepting awards in my bathroom. And I'd get on a coffee table or something, and and do things, and they would pay me in loose change, mostly dimes.
Don't clutch your back so tight, ma'am. I mean no harm. A black cat comes over and they reach right...
And at that point, it was people who I loved, loving your back.
He's a putz, he's a gunner, he's a schmuck, he's a Shrek. You know what I mean? Whoosh! Do you feel all right? Huh?
We did some very funny stuff. The living room was always the best room to work.
Where have you been? Comanche's moved next door.
As he got older, Billy Crystal moved his act out of the living room. And while the other kids were listening to Beatles records, Crystal was listening to Bill Cosby, memorizing his comedy routines for the school talent show.
You didn't think of it as stealing material. I was 15 years old. Killed. The audience loved it. Years later, as everyone got into Cosby, they'd come running up to me and go, hey, you know, this guy Cosby's doing your stuff. I said, well, whoa. Is he really? What is the best toy in the world? This and a good new baseball glove, a mic and a glove.
Billy thought he might be a major leaguer, but his father was a jazz promoter, and his uncle owned Commodore, a jazz record company. And in a house bursting with musicians and entertainers, showbiz took over.
The musicians that were in and out of the house were a tremendous influence that way, always encouraging and appreciating and knowing, you know, what that's about.
Is there a relationship between the kind of comedy improvisation you do on stage and the jazz improvisation you grew up around?
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, you know, jazz is so, you know, part of me. It's, you start out with a main theme, and then you go off and do. And you ramble and you improvise and find a way to get back to the main theme, and then you're done.
He's a musician. He knows Jolson. He knows the Beaver. He knows Dizzy Gillespie, and he knows, you know, the new music, and he knows the old performers. You know, and so you can see it in his work. I see it all the time.
With decades of stand-up behind him, Alan King can hear the jazz in Billy's comic timing.
It's listening.
Listening to what?
Listening to the reaction of the audience.
That also reminds me of the way Billy improvises on stage. Because you have to be listening and reacting
Of
off.
course. Got to be. And when you get stuck, you just don't say, where are you from? That seems to be the great ad lib now. You run out of laughs. Where are you from? Oh, Cincinnati, you know. And they get a second wind, and they get the brain going again. Billy doesn't have to do that. Billy goes with the flow.
They come in and go, Long Beach, take the court. It's our home court. We run up and are greeted by 1,000 of their fans, all in dashikis, right? And they're swaying back and forth doing these scary chants. Erasmus, Erasmus, cue them.
I think he's very powerful on stage, and he really has a lot of control. Like a jazz group playing, and the guy starts to solo, you know, and he starts off light, and just like blah blah blah, and then by the end of it, you know, so he'll, you know, start off light about something and then start to roll, and then he's gone.
Gregory Hines first worked with Crystal on the 1986 film Running Scared.
Well, I've known a lot of comics that have that musicality, but most of them have been black. You know, and he has, there's a certain sensitivity that he has that's similar, that I find similar.
To a black comedian?
To black comedians that I've known and worked with over the years.
Ladies and gentlemen, Billy Crystal.
It's obvious when he walks out that he's very confident. It always just comes out nice and easy, and he's very confident in it, and he just plays it. He plays it like an instrument.
I liked Atlantic City. It's interesting there. There's a group of people that comes there that I can't believe. You've seen them. The bus people. Where did they come from? How did they get so many ugly people in one bus? Did Woody Allen cast this town? They wander through the lobbies. Does the bus leave at 5? Huh? Where's the goddamn bus?
Does the boss leave at 5?
But audiences can be unpredictable. At this show in Westbury, New York, that line had them humming. With a different crowd a few nights later, the same line fell flat.
Does the boss leave at 5?
What makes a difference between crowds? Time of day?
Sometimes the combination of people, the air conditioning in the room. If it's too cold, they don't laugh. If it's not seated properly, who knows what happened to them?
And you don't necessarily know who
Don't
you're
even know.
sitting
No, two of them said, Mr. Damone, you're the greatest singer we've ever seen. and I signed 2 autographs as Buddy Greco. Look, I'm funny hit, and it was the first show. And the original Babe Ruth, this is true if you're film buffs, was Yul Brynner.
Eventually, Crystal won back his audience with fewer high-flying solos and more old favorites.
You gonna hit home run today, babe?
I'm going to try. A lot of times the audience will be satisfied, but I didn't work as hard as I could have, perhaps, or I got through it. And I have very high standards for me. This is one of, this hour I'm on stage is a very precious time for me. And if it's not that great experience, then it hurts, because it's the last thing I do before I go to bed, usually.
And then does it ever
This
get you?
perfectionism is a bad disease. It's a bad disease to get because you're never satisfied.
Then let me ask you this. How do you hook up a VCR?
But perfectionism had to take a back seat on a hit-or-miss TV show like Saturday Night Live. The most memorable character Billy created during the 1985 season was all freewheeling improvisation. And Fernando made him a star. We're talking about one special line of dialogue.
3 words.
3 words that go,
You look mad.
More people were saying it than I was saying it. It was on the news. Martina Navratilova wins Wimbledon. She looked marvelous. Out here with Fernando Valenzuela, he pitches a great game. He looked marvelous. Mr. Reagan comes out of the hospital after he was shot. I look marvelous. He did that. And it was just amazing.
Even more amazing, Crystal was almost one of the cast on this, the very first Saturday Night Live episode in 1975. But the show's producers demanded that he shorten his routine, and Crystal's manager decided Billy should not go on at all. His friends went on to become stars.
Live from New York, it's Saturday night.
I remember hitting the elevators, Gilda running after me, crying, what happened? What were you going? So I'm gone. Boom. Suddenly I'm on a Long Island Railroad going home, still in my makeup, just crying and all of that stuff, and looking like Dustin Hoffman at the end of Midnight Cowboy, just like that. And
Did you feel you had blown it?
yeah, I think to some extent I thought I had blown it.
And that the career was just, it was...
No, I just thought it was a detour. That it was, oh boy, this is going to take a long time. Got off at the wrong ramp.
What the hell did you ever do?
13 years later, Billy Crystal's career is cruising. He's just written and starred in a new film called Memories of Me, in which he plays a surgeon at odds with his self-centered father, played by Alan King.
What the hell do you want from me? What I want from you couldn't give me if your life depended on it.
And what's that?
How about love?
The film is sentimental and even schmaltzy, and for Crystal, it's a stretch away from comedy. But no matter how far and how fast his movie career zooms, Crystal will never leave stand-up behind. On stage, bopping and soloing in front of an audience and hearing the crowd respond, Crystal still finds the fulfillment he remembers from the old days, when the melody of his parents and relatives laughing at the characters he created was the sweetest sound he knew.
I just made that up. So... It makes me feel like I can't do any wrong, It makes you feel like I could say what I feel, as outrageous as it may get, and they'll accept it. They may disagree with it, but they'll listen. Someone is listening.
Is it like you're showing everything inside, even the worst parts of yourself, the craziest, the weirdest parts of yourself, and it's all being accepted, all being loved?
They don't have to
all
love
being
everything,
forgiven?
And there's something if they even laugh, I'll even tell them, come on, it was too easy, don't. I got better weights. So in the back, I got special for you. Just a little bit longer. Sure. Performing well for an audience means so much to me. I want them to take me home that night and go, boy, he was good. sexual feeling, it's a powerful feeling, and ultimately it just makes you feel whole. That all these crazy people, you know, they're in dress rehearsal now. They're all getting together, and, you know, we're on soon, you know, they're all arguing, and boom, my head does a show for an hour. It's the living room.
Thank you, babes.
It has a classic design and an engine that sings.
My dandruff shampoo is good.
Better try something else. Mine really works.
You'd better try something else, like Selsun Blue. Doctors recommend it more than all of the leading brands. None get rid of dandruff better than Selsun Blue.
I won't wear anything without Cross Your Heart, because Cross Your Heart has crisscross shaping. So I always look better, whatever I wear.
Playtex Cross Your Heart Bra.
Don't wear anything without Cross Your Heart.
From Playtex.
The fit that makes the fashion.
Careful. Remember the new carpet, darling.
Are you going to live in fear of your new carpet? Or buy a worry-free carpet from Allied Fibers with a 5-year warranty against dirt, wear, and more stains than other stain-resistant carpets. It takes out something other carpets can't, the worry.
Thank you, darling. Oh, you forgot the orange juice.
Worry-free carpet. It's more than just stain-resistant. It's totally worry-free.
What happened when Sony put this incredible color TV and one of our most advanced VCRs into this machine? They shrunk. Introducing Video Walkman from Sony, the portable TV and VCR that takes video out of your home and into your life.
Coming up on West 57, who was Jack the Ripper?
New season, new time, new wave, premiering Monday.
Oh, no, it can't be.
New Heart.
Coming of age is about growing older with dignity.
Damn it, Jenny, I'm not ready for this.
It's the first time a show is really dealing with that issue in a funny way.
I'm going to sue somebody.
It makes such a difference when those characters are a part of your heart.
This is CBS. CBS This Morning, weekdays at 7 o'clock on Channel 10.
Santa Monica is a pretty wonderful place with its beautiful parks, its boardwalk, its beaches. And if Santa Monica activist Harvey Rosenfield gets his way, Santa Monica will be all that much nicer. Harvey's written Prop 103, which will lower rates in Santa Monica, but raises rates for 12 million drivers outside of L.A. See how it works? We pay more, so Santa Monica and L.A. can pay less. Vote no on Prop 103. Why should we pay more, so L.A. can pay less?
This is a News 10 news break, brought to you tonight by Taco Bell.
Good evening. For Newsbreak, I'm Jerome Gray. Fire investigators are trying to determine the cause of a blaze in the historic Delta town of Locke. The early morning blaze damaged a 60-year-old boathouse and posed a big threat to an entire town of wooden structures. Rescue workers are moving into another plan to save the trapped whales in Alaska. Meantime, the smallest whale is presumed dead. Now this.
Now with our new 59-cent value menu, nobody beats the border.
Taco Bell has a roll to make a run for the border.
Also at 11, Charlton Heston is helping Chinese actors do Mutiny on the Bounty, Mandarin style. Join us.
Between August the 31st and November the 9th in 1888, a person or persons unknown murdered and mutilated 5 prostitutes in the slums of London's East End, then vanished into the fabled London fog without a trace. Though Jack the Ripper, as he came to be known, was a rather small-time homicidal maniac by current standards, 100 years later, this is furious speculation. This fall, in London, more people than ever, professional and amateur sleuths alike, are playing a ghoulish guessing game, asking, who done it?
Jack the Ripper is interesting to everybody because it's a crime that Scotland Yard never solved.
I think Jack the Ripper was a doctor.
Montague Druitt.
Jimmy Kelly. Some lunatic.
Royalty. Nobody agrees on anything about him.
He is a poor local immigrant.
It could have been any man.
Kosminski was Jack the Ripper.
It had to be a butcher.
I think he was probably royalty.
Alonzo Maduro.
Everyone is guessing.
And we've solved it.
Well, he could have been anyone, couldn't he? Huh? I really don't know. Who do you think he was?
Hello, darling. Like a bit of fun?
Speculation about the identity of Jack the Ripper is nothing new. Generations of film directors have been unable to resist the trappings of this Victorian mystery. Foggy streets, gaslight, little black bags with knives, and hints of murderous hijinks in high places.
Backstreet abortionists, mad doctors, mad poisoners, and in fact almost anyone who lived in London in 1888 nowadays is likely to be put forward as a possible candidate.
Donald Rumbelow, who has researched the case and written a book about it, is what many have come to call a Ripperologist.
And I strongly suspect he was a sort of a Mr. Nobody, a Mr. Average, who was in the crowds watching all the police activity and hugging himself with glee as he watched everyone running around and around.
Back then, London's East End was teeming with some 1,200 prostitutes. Prime suspects in the murders included Montague Druitt, lawyer and cricket player, Walter Thickett, a bohemian painter, and a variety of doctors and barber surgeons because of the surgical precision with which the victims were carved up. Even the Queen's own physician, Sir William Gull, came under suspicion, not to mention the Queen's grandson, the Duke of Clarence.
It has all the elements of the best thrillers, hasn't it?
Isn't it a bit of an embarrassment that Scotland Yard still has on its file the unsolved case of Jack the Ripper?
No embarrassment. No embarrassment at all.
How many suspects did you say you had?
About 176.
Do you have a list of them?
There we are. That's just some of them, written on computer paper.
Do the police have to investigate every single one?
No. Some of them are so strange. How about a fanatical vivisectionist? A man dressed in woman's clothing? An epileptic maniac who wore snowshoes for quietness?
Any new evidence in the case first crosses the desk of William Waddell, New Scotland Yard criminologist.
And in fact, last November, a set of papers came back here. An envelope was sent to me, and inside we found papers that had been missing for 50 years.
The papers included 3 morgue photos, never seen before.
That is Nichols, yes, who was found in Bucks Row. Yes. Okay. And that's the second victim. That's Chapman, Annie Chapman. And she was found murdered in the yard at Hanbury Street, 29 Hanbury Street. And that is Stride, Liz Stride, Long Liz, as she was known. She's rather a handsome lady, isn't she? You look at her. There's always been an obsession in Britain with murder, which I don't think other countries have ever really had. We just always appear, for reasons that I don't think anybody would ever be able to work out completely, totally absorbed in violent crimes.
David Webb is the chief librarian of Bishopsgate Institute, a private library that borders the neighbourhood where the murders took place and serves as a sort of Jack the Ripper reading room.
Does it frighten you that
Yes.
you have all these Ripperologists coming in?
Yes, it does.
With slightly bent ways
Yes.
of dealing with
To a certain extent, yes. One gentleman came in here one lunchtime, and after a few minutes' conversation, it was quite clear that he had convinced himself that he, despite the chronological impossibilities, was Jack the Ripper.
How did you cope with him?
At arm's length. I got rid of him as quickly as possible. He had so absorbed himself into the subject that he could describe each individual killing as though he was actually there on the spot doing it, complete with sound effects and everything.
You're looking good, Mary. You're looking good, kid.
John Morrison, a retired London truck driver, is one of those obsessed with the Ripper legend. He spends most of his spare time tending the grave of Ripper victim Mary Kelly.
We'll get the monkey who put you in. Don't worry. We'll get him, right?
Morrison claims to have received 4 messages from Mary recently that have given him the clues he believes he needs to crack the case.
Mary Kelly isn't asking. She's not telling you that Jimmy Kelly committed those murders.
Morrison hasn't written a book on Jim Kelly yet, but he has papered the walls of his small home with what he feels is enough evidence to convict him.
So I'm now prepared to go to a learned judge in Great Britain or before the United States Supreme Court and say, this is not a theory, this is fact. Every bit of evidence I give you is acceptable.
It's widely accepted that Mary Kelly, the Ripper's final victim, was last seen alive here at the 10 Bells pub in Whitechapel. 100 years later, it's still a popular working-class bar.
There's a very strong possibility that probably 3 or 4 of the victims drank in here at one time or another. And as a result of that, people consider that possibly whoever was Jack the Ripper also had a drink in here.
The commercial potential of the Ripper 100th anniversary has not been lost on 10 Bells owner Ivona Strauski. She's doing a brisk trade in Jack the Ripper T-shirts, Jack the Ripper keyrings, and the Ripper Tipple, a blood-red cocktail. But she's not the only British entrepreneur to discover that there's money this year in unsolved murder. There's the Jack the Ripper computer game,
Bystander.
the Jack the Ripper board game, even the Jack the Ripper exhibit at Madame Tussauds Wax Museum has spruced up the corpses for the occasion.
I'm going to start by taking you somewhere very sordid.
And last but not least, the popular Jack the Ripper walking tour, featuring 4 out of the 5 murder sites, is doing a booming business.
The woman was named Mary Ann or Polly Nichols. Her throat had been cut twice from left to right, deeply back to the spine. There were signs on the spine that the murderer had been hacking away at it, trying to cut her head off, and had failed.
Stop, Jack! Fight back! Stop, Jack! Fight back! Stop, Jack! Fight back! Stop, Jack! Fight back!
If some radical British feminists had their way, a few other heads would be rolling. This is a group called Action Against the Ripper Celebrations. Outraged by this Ripper mania, they're marching to put the Jack the Ripper merchandisers out of business.
Even though it happened 100 years ago, we can't afford not to protest and say that we've had enough, that we are fed up of being sexual objects, we are fed up of being murdered and killed by men, and we're fed up of men getting money out of us, alive or dead.
Hello, dearie. Show you a good time for a quid.
But plenty of money continues to be made by some 20-odd films that have all taken their shots at solving the mystery.
Well, me Mum told me there would be nights like this. Oh, my. You are a big one now, aren't you? Come on, darling.
How about Jack the Ripper as the Loch Ness Monster in disguise?
668, take 1. Background action.
This weekend, just in case you thought that nothing more could possibly be said about the subject, American audiences are being invited to watch a 4-hour Jack the Ripper, starring Michael Caine.
Someone, somewhere, knows something.
It's the Ripper transatlantic media event of the year. This British miniseries has just aired in England and concludes its American broadcast tomorrow night on CBS. For Caine, it's not just another movie part. It's like stepping into his own past.
For instance, in the East End of London is Billingsgate Fish Market. My family, me personally, had worked in that market for 300 years. You understand? So, and I know all the streets and everywhere where the Ripper stalked. And for us, there's also that thing that if the Ripper had been in his early 20s when he'd done it, for these things, he could have still been alive in 1965. That's what fascinates us here. He could have still been amongst us all that time. We don't know.
Who is he? I don't know yet, but something stinks.
2 in one night. This is getting ridiculous.
So what do we do, Holmes? We must continue. Jack the Ripper will not allow conditions such as these to go unused. He is out now, Watson.
Find it at the heart of every truck we build. It's on the street and off the road. It's the new spirit of performance.
The top new spirit of Dodge.
You know how a great cut can give you a whole new feeling about yourself? That is nothing compared to what the right color can do. Here it is, nice and easy. Pick a shade that's a little lighter, a little darker, whatever. Shampoo it in and wow. It's you, only better. You're going to be walking around, tossing that head of yours and loving the way it feels. Nice and easy. Give it a shot.
Not every woman is a size 8. That's why Legs makes a pantyhose that fits you perfectly. Just my size.
She's so fine. Watch her shine. That girl is alright. She's got legs.
Some of the most beautiful legs in the world are just my size.
What up here? Here, you get to keep the sign. Okay, look at that.
When you choose someone to help you sell your home, you want it to be somebody you can trust. Maybe that's why Century 21 is the #1 home selling system in America. We know a whole lot about trust.
Come with us.
Get the picture?
Put your trust in #1. Century 21.
It has been front-page news for the past month. The shocking revelation that across the country, tons of radioactive material have been dumped into the air and water around the government's nuclear production plants. That the Department of Energy has potentially exposed hundreds of thousands of Americans to contamination, cancer, and death. We have been reporting on this story for almost 2 years. Only now are Americans beginning to accept the fact that their government has lied, that it has knowingly contaminated them while making the weapons that are supposed to keep them safe. Savannah River, South Carolina. Nuclear accidents covered up. Environment contaminated. Severe safety problems. Reactors shut down. Fernald, Ohio. Tons of nuclear waste pumped into the environment. 14,000 residents suing. Workers on strike. The plant shut down. Rocky Flats, Colorado. Last week, an accident. Workers contaminated. The plutonium processing plant shut down. Hanford, Washington, the nation's largest nuclear facility. Residents living downwind from this plant told us 2 years ago that the government was lying to them, covering up its deadly mistakes. After a month of disturbing new disclosures about the other plants, their words may serve as a warning to those who are just now finding out the truth.
You go down the road and look, and it just shocks you in this area of how much cancer we've got.
If they have to put on contamination suits to come out here, why in the hell didn't they tell us to wear one?
278. That's 10-4.
Until a couple of years ago, people who grew up with Hanford felt comfortable being a part of the nuclear age. But for some, that changed when the Department of Energy was forced to release documents showing that Hanford had routinely released extraordinary amounts of radioactivity for 2 decades, beginning in 1945. Individual releases hundreds of times higher than those recorded at 3 Mile Island. It was just 6 miles downwind from the Hanford Reservation, where Tom Bailey was born and raised. Did you know what they were doing over here?
We knew that they were making nuclear bombs.
And we've always, around here as farmers, we've always said, well, there can't be very much coming out of there because you can't see it and you can't taste it and you can't smell it. It's got to be okay. Now we see that they've known since the 40s, that the iodine, 46, that the iodine-131 was settling in our thyroids.
My sister has thyroid problems. She's on thyroid medication.
I've had my thyroid problems. Right after Mom lost the baby, I had 2 growths in my throat that had to be removed. Then my sister had her growths just right after that.
Bailey and other residents of the area were never warned as children and young adults that they might be at risk from radioactive emissions.
I stood there and watched my baby die and gasp for air. I stood right there and watched it die. And it's a real trauma to watch your baby just die. There's nothing I can do for her.
He tried so hard to breathe, and the doctors put a respirator on him and tried to get him to breathe, but he couldn't. And since I've studied, I am convinced that it's because I was exposed to the radioactivity of iodine-131.
Of 7 of us, 5 of us have clinically diagnosed tumors or cancer.
Did your family have any history?
The only members of our family and extended family that have had cancer are those that have been to the Tri-Cities.
Nothing is without risk, and the risk in the early days were certainly greater than they are now. But basically, I think there's still evidence of safe operations during that entire period of time.
Mike Lawrence is the Department of Energy's manager for Hanford's operations. When we talked with him 2 years ago, he defended Hanford's record.
The Department of Energy has dumped into the environment over 1 million curies of radiation. 3 Mile Island, 13 curies of radiation caused evacuation, caused lawsuits, caused everything else. Well, 1 million curies of radiation isn't exactly a small risk.
Well, we're talking about levels and quantities and comparing it to 3 Mile Island. And obviously, our releases over the 40 years are far greater than what occurred at 3 Mile Island. But the important point to focus on is what is the effect? What is the impact of those releases?
You don't know.
We have not been able to measure any impact or observe any impact.
But you haven't done any studies in the population?
Yes, we have.
In the population?
On the workforce. Certainly you can't divorce the workforce from the population.
When you did health profiles at the plant, I mean, children don't work at the plant. You did no health effects studies on children or pregnant women.
Right.
In fact, Hanford's neighbors could have received much higher doses of radiation than the workers because radioactive releases came from smokestacks and were blown away from the plant downwind toward an unprotected population. That population included up to 20,000 children, infants, and unborn, who are 10 to 100 times more vulnerable to radiation than adults.
So the key problem that the epidemiologists and the scientists have to deal with is distinguishing what would occur normally and what occurred because of any Hanford releases.
But the Department of Energy made little effort to find out. In fact, until recently, it consistently opposed a comprehensive independent health study. The Secretary of Energy would not talk with us about that. Now, Bailey and his supporters have convinced Congress to fund an independent study. It will be conducted by the Centers for Disease Control, and it's getting underway this month.
Okay, so you're referring to the Hanford? Okay, and you were, in the late 50s, you were where, ma'am? Well, you were right there with it, weren't you?
Has the Department of Energy taken the initiative on this?
Oh, no. We've drugged them kicking and screaming all the way. It's been a horrible battle. Terrible. I am not a Hanford basher. I have never been anti-nuclear. But I am pro-accountability and pro for the people of this whole part of eastern Washington. These are my people. I was born and raised here, and I care about them. And we want to know what happened to us.
If you had asked about Tom Bailey at the Mesa Cafe a few years ago, patrons either didn't care what he was saying or called him a troublemaker. Today, attitudes have changed.
Now somebody like Tom who finally spoke up, yeah, he made people realize, and maybe what he did 3 years ago was the beginning of what was uncovered in other places.
Before, it seemed like most people kind of wanted to ignore it, but now it's becoming quite factual.
You know, nobody has the right to hurt my health. I don't care if it's government or not.
We no longer can go on poisoning ourselves. We're doing this supposedly because the Russians or the Soviets are a big danger to us. At the same time, we're a danger to our own people.
Senator John Glenn has been warning for years that the Department of Energy should be held accountable.
The time has come to stop the self-regulation by the Department of Energy. We don't give anybody else the authority to just regulate themselves or not as they see fit in living up to the law. And I think they have proven over the past several decades that they should be monitored from outside.
We wanted to ask Energy Secretary John Harrington what he thinks about Glenn's idea and about DOE's plan to clean up the nation's nuclear mess, a plan that could cost nearly $200 billion. Harrington declined to be interviewed.
There's got to be a check. They've got to be answerable for what they're doing, and they still are not answerable.
We first talked with Susan Perks and her parents 2 years ago. To them, the answers seemed so obvious, and the bureaucracy in Washington so frustrating.
I feel like these people need to stop and look at the human element instead of money, instead of power. You'd expect this type of thing in a country that didn't have humanities in it, but not in the United States.
The Hanford people don't know the people at Fernald. The Fernald people don't know the people at Savannah River. Sometimes we're just overwhelmed with emotion when we get together and visit about what's taking place, because it's the same story over and over.
They are stories like Susan. She blames Hanford's emissions for a thyroid operation and a deteriorating immune system.
I can't drive on the roads. Now it's getting so bad I have to take oxygen to drive on the roads because of the diesel and the car exhaust fumes. I've developed a lot of food allergies now also. I'm a prisoner. I can't even go out and help my daughter buy her homecoming dress because I can't go in the stores.
Human dignity is part of the issue. The dignity of the people that have had thyroid problems, the women that have handicapped children, people that have lost money, farming have lost their farms because of their health problems. It's dignity.
What difference will it make to you if you find out through the health study that radiation has caused your health problems?
They will just confirm my worst fears. That I could have been healthy, I could have had a different life, I could have achieved my goals. I could have been a human being instead of just watching life go by.
Say that this study was successful, and they do find that this is the case, that we've had too much radiation. Think of what that would mean throughout the whole United States and all the other plants. There would be checks and balances.
Are you afraid for your children?
Yeah, I'm real afraid. And it's probably because I've been so sick, but I look at them, and if they get sick at all, you wonder, could they be releasing again? Where is it safe to move? Who can you trust? If you can't trust your own government, who can you trust?
Have you ever noticed how cars mean a little more to some people than they do to others? Nissan has. That's why we build ours the way we do. We understand that a car fulfills a number of human needs. And transportation is only one of them. Nissan, built for the human race.
In the pizza delivery game, the Noid zaps ordinary pizza. But Domino's Pizza's best because they deliver more than all the rest. The Noid just can't beat the best. Domino's Pizza. Nobody delivers better.
Today's Duracell batteries are built to last up to 30% longer than the ones we made a few years back. Guaranteeing a long, happy life. Today's Duracell lasts 30% longer.
Come on, Tyler. Hurry up, boy. Come on, Tyler.
When it's cold and rough outside,
Come on, Tyler.
try something warm and creamy inside. Cream of Wheat Hot Cereal or Instant Mix-N-Eat. Their smooth texture always lets the taste come through.
Again?
2 warm ways to come in from the cold.
Even
if you wash your hair every day, you're probably not getting it really clean.
From the salon professionals at Germac, clean hair.
Most shampoos, conditioners, plus styling products leave a residue that can build up. That's why there's Germac Reviving System. Step 1 cleans away over 90% of that residue. Step 2 gently restores moisture. Use Reviving System every week or so and give your hair a clean start.
Reviving System, another Germac product, salon developed, salon tested for salon results at home.
They told her she couldn't do it, but her dream was to conquer the sky.
I want to dance with the angels.
Natalie Bertinelli is Pancho Barnes, a world television premiere Tuesday at 8.
Two men who make things move. Herschel and the Cowboys. Randall Cunningham and the Eagles. An NFC East collision tomorrow on CBS Sports.
That's it for West 57th tonight. Thanks for joining us. I'm Karen Burns. Here's a look at what you'll be seeing in the weeks to come.
This man reminds me of someone that did experimentation in Auschwitz.
I don't expect my current gynecologic peers to accept my work, and I am very willing to stand the test of time.
And we are recording.
I found them in every situation you can think of in the state of Florida, from swimming pools, under cars, the storm drains in Orlando, a mile underground. They're just everywhere.
Home to Love Canal, the sweet sounds of a cellist, and American artists in Israel. Join Charles Kuralt for these stories and more tomorrow on CBS News Sunday morning. And tomorrow on CBS Sports, the action starts live at 12:30 Eastern with the NFL Today. Then see the Cowboys battle the Eagles or other regional action. For a transcript, please send $3 to West 57th Transcripts, 267 Broadway, New York, New York, 10007.